Why does Catnap never speak? Well, he can talk, but there's a dark reason why he doesn't. When he was created, the red smoke system was implanted in his throat, damaging his vocal cords and making speaking extremely difficult and painful. But there's more. The red gas is highly flammable, meaning it ignites easily. Every time Catnap speaks, it irritates his respiratory system, worsening his health and increasing his pain over time. Because of this, Catnap only speaks when it's absolutely necessary, and he's coming for you if you don't subscribe. Was Huggy Wuggy's voice finally revealed? Most people believe Huggy is completely mute since we've never heard him say a word. But let me tell you, there's a chapter where we can finally hear his real voice. Throughout the game, Huggy seems unable to speak. Even when he finally meets up with Kissy, he doesn't say a word. All we hear are his screams during the chase. However, in Chapter 2, there's a Huggy poster where you can actually hear what he sounds like.
Does someone need a hug?
Why the player is the luckiest person alive. Many think he's strong, but he's never actually defeated anyone. He didn't beat Huggy, he just dropped a box on him. With Mommy, she got stuck in the grinder, and all we did was pull a lever. Even with Catnap, we got lucky because the prototype appeared at the very last second, and Doey was crushed by a machine after we froze him. In fact, the only real fight the player ever had was against the prototype, where he ends up dying and was finally defeated. And if you don't want to be weak like the player, subscribe. The player is the luckiest person alive. Huggy Wuggy is a hero. At the beginning of Chapter 5, we see Huggy trying to get through the door to catch us. But while this is happening, the room starts filling with Poppy gas, making us hallucinate and leaving us on the brink of death. Right at that moment, this is Poppy. We finally have a clue for Poppy Playtime Chapter 6. Mob Entertainment just dropped this poster featuring every character in the game, including some like Sir Poops-a-Lot, and even Limon is there. However, there's a hidden detail behind the prototype that very few people notice. Some buildings with lit windows appear that look just like the ones from the beginning of Chapter 5. This shows they could be the buildings where the prototype is keeping the orphans captive, or maybe even his poppy gel factory. We finally have Lily will be the prototype's ally in Chapter 6. After Lily's death, we can see how the prototype rescues her, taking her to his lab to revive her with poppy gel. Her hair begins to grow all over her body, replacing her arms and legs. However, her outfit also changes, replaced now by a metal armor. Then, he bathes her in poppy gel to transform her into a new version of Mutant Lily. She becomes his ally to dominate Playtime Co., and she will dominate you too if you don't subscribe. Lily, the prototype is not the villain. We finally have this is Poppy's Huggy. Huggy. This is Poppy. We finally have Lily will be the prototype. The prototype is not the villain. He only wanted to save everyone, to free the toys and the children from the factory so they wouldn't go through the same hell he lived. He finished off the evil scientists in the factory who only sought to harm them. He was a savior to many, but everyone thinks he's the bad guy just because he looks creepy. When Player was in the factory, the prototype never did anything to him, even though he could have destroyed him at any moment. But he's gonna come for you if you don't subscribe. The player is invincible. He survives brutal hits and massive falls like they're nothing, taking down every enemy without even touching them, just by using his surroundings. But it gets crazier. He doesn't eat, drink, or sleep, showing infinite stamina while carrying a grab pack that weighs over 66 pounds on his back, all while sprinting through the factory. The truth is, he is the real villain, who came to exterminate every toy, and you'll be his next victim if you don't subscribe.
God cannot.
Everyone knows the prototype is the strongest, but in reality, Brawn the dinosaur is the largest toy in the entire factory, and probably the most powerful. If he weren't chained and wounded, he could defeat everyone with his massive tail. He could even rip the prototype's limbs off and leave him looking like a tiny, laughing jester. Brawn will shatter you with his enormous tail if you don't subscribe. Has the player's voice been revealed? We all thought he was mute because he never makes a sound, but in reality, he can talk, and he only does it when he finds his best friend, Limon. That's right, that is the player's voice. You see, Limon isn't a toy. He's a real lemon created by scientists, but with googly eyes. Only the player sees him as someone important, and he only speaks to him out of respect and friendship. If you don't want your head to turn into a lemon, subscribe. As the player... In this alternative universe, Mommy Longlegs never died. She saves Lily from falling into the void. Right before the tragic accident, Mommy drops down from above, grabbing Lily and leaving her safely by her side. However, Mommy is the one who ends up being crushed by the platform, leaving only her arm hanging behind. This tragic sacrifice changes the entire story. In this alternative universe, why doesn't the player take a shower? When we meet Lily, she tells us that we smell like a corpse.
They smell like dead bodies.
But the real reason is that we have destroyed several enemies and our body is covered in their blood. Also, in Chapter 4, we walk through a path filled with dead employees, leaving us with a foul smell. But the most terrifying part is that Lily doesn't even have a nose, and you'll lose yours too if you don't subscribe. Why doesn't Poppy Playtime lie to us? In Mommy Longlegs' commercial, they included a text saying, "Do not expose to extreme high or low temperatures." There are even posters all over the game with this warning. But in reality, the sign that spoiled Mommy's death is this one, warning us not to put our hands in the grinder, exactly what she ends up doing. If you don't want the grinder to eat you too, subscribe. Poppy, is Lily the new prototype? In this new fan-made, we can see how the prototype took Lily's wounded body. However, her brother Rory wants to rescue her, following the clues that lead him straight to his house. But when he arrives, he finds Lily transformed into this terrifying monster. She has turned evil and now wants to fight her own brother. But the most important thing is that she now has the prototype's strength, and she will destroy you if you don't subscribe. Why does Kissy always help us? Kissy was created with the purpose of calming Huggy down. That's why whenever Huggy sees Kissy, he always calms down. And that is why Kissy is kind by nature. She doesn't like to kill or cause harm. She only attacks to protect Poppy, whom she considers her sister. And she always helps us advance through the game because we have helped Poppy since the beginning. Subscribe. Why does If you look for Lily's crumpets in the kitchen instead of the basement, she'll tell you this.
I said they're in the oven in the basement.
The prototype is always following and watching us. In fact, that's exactly what it says on his golden trophy. When we see Nightmare Catnap, it's because in Home Sweet Home, we inhaled so much poppy gas that the player can barely stand and is having hallucinations. If you look for Lily's why can't Huggy talk? Unlike other toys who can speak, Huggy can only scream. This is because the toys that are unable to speak were the first children to be transformed. Back then, the process was difficult and painful, causing permanent damage to their vocal cords. This is what prevents them from ever speaking again. Why can't What if Kissy saved Lily in Poppy Playtime? In this fan-made just before Lily's accident, Kissy appears to rescue her and jumps to grab her hand, throwing her safely toward us. However, the platform collapses along with Kissy. Just when we think all is lost, her hand appears and she survives. This plot twist would change something deep in Lily's heart, and she could finally be your girlfriend. What if Huggy saved Lily and Poppy What if Kissy If you look for Lily's why can't Huggy talk? What if Kissy saved Lily and Poppy What if Huggy saved Lily and Poppy Playtime? In this fan-made, after escaping from Lily, Huggy suddenly appears and leaps to catch her before she falls, throwing her safely toward us. However, Huggy falls while trying to jump off the platform and is hit by a beam, causing him to fall into the void and be crushed to death. What if Huggy was mistreated by Miss Gracie? Every single morning, she woke him up through a television screen to force him to sort figures in a specific order. The threat was cruel. He received a brutal electric shock. The torment was so unbearable that Huggy eventually collapsed, screaming and destroying everything in a blind rage. The worst part? To stop his anger, they would force him to sleep using the red gas. Huggy was Did you know? Huggy tries to rip off the prototype's claw and opens his mouth wider than ever from the pain. If we pick up Limon, he will make this sound. Limon! But if we leave him with his true family, epic music starts to play. Also, Lily was going to have pink hair instead of purple, but they changed it because she looks too much like Mommy. But did you know? Huggy tries to rip. Did you know? Player is the true victim in Poppy Playtime, and yet everyone blames him.
Your fault! You.
And you.
Limon is the smallest character in all of Poppy Playtime, measuring only 3.15 inches. Also, Kissy gets slapped by the prototype, and as she falls, she hits her head against his metal leg. Did you know? Many people misunderstood the ending of Many people misunderstood the ending of Chapter 5 when the prototype Many people misunderstood the ending of Chapter 5. When the prototype picks up Player and throws them into the Poppy jail, everyone thinks he's throwing Poppy, but she's actually hidden under the map. Huggy is strong enough to smash through iron doors, but he can't break a simple piece of glass to catch us. Brawn is so broken that with his last bit of strength, all he can do is track us with his eyes. Also, did you know, when we first meet Lily, Player doesn't even try to run away. After 5 chapters of escaping, he is too exhausted to keep running. When Kissy loses her arm, Huggy actually notices and gets sad for her. But the most heartbreaking detail happens during the final boss fight. Doey calls out desperately for his parents, begging for help. And if you think this was the saddest moment in Poppy Playtime, like and subscribe. What actually happened during the hour of joy in Poppy Playtime? Huggy suddenly went insane, ripping the head off the man in front of him and crushing others with his long arms. Mommy slammed humans into the ground, grabbing others and hurling them from the air just to watch them hit the floor. Catnap devoured everyone he found alive inside the Playtime Company facilities. Poppy helped free Kissy, who joined her side to slaughter the factory workers, letting no one escape. Finally, the Smiling Critters and Boxy Boo devoured the last employees trying to run away. But if you don't want Catnap to be under your bed tonight, like and subscribe. What actually?
Who will fall for this?
Who is stronger, Rory and Huggy or the prototype? In this intense new fan-made, after the prototype steals Rory's shield and strips him of all his powers, Huggy goes wild and tries to attack. However, the prototype strikes back, leaving him nearly lifeless on the ground. Just when everything seems lost, Chum appears and injects a mysterious liquid into Huggy, transforming him into a high-strength monster. This gives Huggy the power to attack the prototype once more and save Rory. If you want to see how this battle ends, like and subscribe. What would happen if Rory met the prototype? In this new fan-made, after Rory eats his cookie shield and transforms into a monster, he strikes Huggy and wraps him in his cape to suffocate him. At that moment, player takes the chance to free Kissy and Giblet to escape. However, the unexpected happens. The prototype appears. He approaches the stage, steals Rory's shield, stripping him of all his powers. Do you think this is the end of Rory? Like and subscribe if you want more of this story. What will Lily kill Miss Delight? In this fan-made, she has us trapped with her weapon, Barb, leaving us helpless on the ground. But just before the final blow, Lily Love Braves appears out of nowhere to save us. With a brutal whip of her braid, she slams Miss Delight down and calling her weak. But most importantly, who do you think is the true Queen of Playcare? Let me know in the comments.
This is a game I made myself. Doesn't it look...